All right, welcome to the next lesson on Athens. So, last lesson, we were talking about Athens and the road to democracy and how that road to democracy came through actually a bunch of tyrants. So listed here, Draco, Solon, Pisistratus, and Callisthenes. In the last lesson, I was able to get through Draco and Solon. It did take a bit of explanation. The video was going a bit long, so I decided to just put it into two parts. So today we're going to be covering Pisistratus and Callisthenes. But just to review what we covered last time, Draco was this incredibly strict guy that came in and just fixed Athens because Athens was just having a tough time. But he was overly strict and overly harsh, and it's basically death for anything that happened. But once he leaves being tyrant, once he's no longer tyrant of Athens, Athens becomes this great place where people then are more willing to follow the rules because they lessen the punishments, but they're used to following those rules. So then we get to Solon, and where he had this massive problem later on with debt slavery. How people in Athens were selling their kids to anyone that would buy them. They were selling them to anyone. And so he basically just kind of ticked everybody off in the beginning just to fix the problem. He ticked off both the upper classes and the lower classes. But then he was viewed as this just great, insightful, and foresightful leader that could just always knew what to do to fix the situation. But then that led to the idea that people just kept coming to him for everything to make decisions. He's like, just stop. And he comes up with the idea of, you could say, like a legislative branch and executive branch. I'm using American terms there. But as well as trial by jury, just to say, you guys need to do more of this. I'm just done with making all these decisions. So that was Draco and Solon. Now we're going to move into Pisistratus and Callisthenes. So sorry, here was Draco, here's Solon. So Pisistratus, different guy. Notice right off the bat I'm introducing him as not a good person. An ambitious, selfish, and conceited guy. Where the story is going, Pisistratus, and how it heavily influences not just their democracy back then, but our sense of democracy and our foundation of the American Republic today, is that what do you do with people like this? There's always going to be someone that is just so charismatic, yet so manipulative. Like, they'll seem like this great person, but in the end, they're just there to get power, and they'll do it by any means possible. Like, how are you going to do that? How are you going to stop someone like this? Like, for instance, this is one of the bases, not necessarily the Pisistratus story, but I'll talk about how this isn't a direct connection, but we see definitely a connection here. Is like James Madison in Federalist Number 10 talks about how you need to essentially, even if you get a bad person in government, they still have to obey the will of the people, or else they're going to lose power. And that's a way to kind of keep a bad person in check, that somehow if they get into power, hopefully they still, even though they're not a good person, might still have to do the right thing to keep their power, because power is still based on the people. They can vote you out type of thing. So one of the stories we get that from is the story of Pisistratus. There's actually a lot of guys where that comes from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. This idea, like, what do you do with a terrible leader? They might even be elected. Like, how do you stop that? Well, first off, you need a moral populace and blah, 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 and people that pay attention to politics, and then keep them honest, basically. Sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So just to explain the story of Pisistratus. He is yet another tyrant of Athens, but the funny thing is, there was nothing wrong. Like, there was nothing so wrong with the city of Athens at the moment that they needed a tyrant. He just wanted to be a tyrant. It was like his goal in life. Like, hey, little Pisistratus, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a tyrant. Well, we don't really need one. Well, then I will create a situation in which I can become one. That's basically his whole deal. So, to explain this, let's see here. To explain this a bit more, I'm going to give you a bit more of a story before I bring up just the things that we get from him that actually help out the invention of democracy, or the coming up with the idea of democracy. And that is this. So he belongs to a very powerful aristocratic family. He's a son to a very powerful aristocrat, the Pisistrid family. And he actually works really hard. He works incredibly hard, actually, at becoming this great guy. Like, he studies hard in school. He's a great athlete. He's a great soldier. He's incredibly smart. And he's also very charismatic. You want to be this guy's friend. like you really just want to be this guy's friend. A Belbert question I like to ask with this, or sometimes I just ask a question, not necessarily a Belbert question, but a question I like to ask in class is just, have you ever had a friend that you realized was just using you? Wasn't really your friend. Not like a true friend. I don't ask for anybody to say, yes, this person, give me names, but usually you get a lot of hands up. And being perfectly honest, there's probably a lot of times where all of us have been that type of a friend or non-friend. It's not, we don't like that. We just don't like it. We don't like being that. At least hopefully we don't like being that. If we realize that, and we definitely don't like it when we're taken advantage of by people that said that they were our friends. But that is this Pisistratus guy. But he looks like this great guy. He's well-spoken. He's smart. He's just everything. And he does something that just no one else has done. He actually moves to Sparta. And he enters the Agoge. Like he enters that Spartan military high school stuff that I was talking about. And he does incredibly well. Like how they accept him in the first place, I don't even know. It's just part of the story. But he does incredible, to the point where even one of the Spartan kings decides, you are awesome, Pisistratus. You are so impressive, which means he's working hard. Pisistratus has worked really hard for this. You got to give him that. He is motivated. He is ambitious. But the Spartan king's like, here's my daughter. You deserve this. I'm going to have, you can make some pretty dang awesome Spartan kids for us, whether they're girls or boys. These are going to be the cream of the crop. That whole breeding horses thing that I talked about with Sparta. I'm sorry if that, anyways, that's the way they viewed it. So this Athenian kid gets married to the daughter of a Spartan king. That's crazy. But he does move back to Athens, and how that is allowed to happen, again, I don't know, but it does. So he comes back with his Spartan wife. And he goes up, or Pisistratus goes to the aristocratic council who was ruling Athens at the time and basically says, you will make me tyrant, or I'm going to have my father-in-law come up and beat everybody up, essentially. I'm trying to explain this in the simplest terms possible. It was, again, more complicated than that, but I'm trying to make this simple. And they give way. Everybody's afraid of Sparta at this point. It's like, we don't want to mess with them. And so he becomes tyrant. But pretty dang quickly, he does something that just, he ruins it for himself. He doesn't have any kids. Chooses not to have kids with his Spartan wife. And when his father-in-law finds out, his father-in-law's pretty ticked. And kind of comes up to have like that father-in-law, son-in-law, conversation, like, you're not doing what you're supposed to. You're not treating my daughter right, that type of thing. And I'm really summing up here. This is not the words he used, but I just say this because, the story goes faster, and it basically says, not going to happen. She's not that cute. Just how Pisistratus can be so smart up to this point and kind of just mess up so badly that way with his father-in-law, don't know. Father-in-law's ticked, and father-in-law actually does get the Spartan army and threatens, I will destroy your city if I don't get my daughter back. Like, you tricked me type thing. And the aristocratic council of Athens is like, yeah, we'll get rid of him for you. We don't want him here in the first place. So Pisistratus gets exiled from Athens. The Spartan king goes back home with his daughter, and Pisistratus kind of has one of those woe is me moments. But as he's walking around the Greece, mainland Greece, more the Attican Peninsula, he comes to a small town, can't remember the name of it, and runs into just this tall, beautiful girl. And he doesn't have the mindset, like, he's still wanting to be tyrant of Athens. Like, his life stream is ended. So when he meets this tall, beautiful girl, he isn't thinking, wow, I want to date her or anything like that. It's, wow, she looks like Athena. I think I might be able to do something here. That's actually the picture you see on the right-hand side is what I'm about to explain. He dresses this woman, this tall, beautiful woman, in just full-on hoplite armor, which is the way of saying like a Greek soldier. Basically dresses her up looking like Athena in armor, rides into Athens and proclaims, the goddess Athena has chosen me as your leader. You must accept me because of divine will. And everybody buys it. Like, I'm sitting here talking about the story, and it's like, there's definitely aristocrats, or there's like, they don't want to buy it, but the people buy it. And so he becomes essentially tyrant again. But this time he's tyrant in a much more shaky ground. So he has to think, how do I shore up support for myself and make sure that I don't get kicked out by the aristocrats once everybody feels like, well, sees through my ruse. And this is where we get these next couple things. Well, first off, he takes away land from the rich aristocrats, again, his main enemies, and gives it to the farmers. He buoys up a support. These people will then forever after, declare support for him. Thanks for giving us stuff. Today we'll call this like redistribution of wealth. Definitely not something to do in a free society that believes in right to property. But if you want to get a big part of the electorate of voters on your side, hey, give them stuff. And you usually have to take it away from someone else. Works quite well. By the way, this is not one of those situations where, like, saying this is what leads into our modern day democracy. Although we've seen examples like this over the world, definitely even just recently over the world, where people are getting their stuff taken away by government just to give it to other people. But this is one of the situations like, hey, you don't want someone like this doing that. Keep away from someone like this. That's kind of that part of this. But he does shore up a lot of things. But the part that we do like about Pisistratus, I shouldn't say do like about him, but like, okay, grudgingly accept about Pisistratus, is that he's like, to shore up power, he gives citizenship to every guy, not women, but every guy in Athens. Beforehand, not everybody was able to vote. It was mostly just the aristocrats that were running the show. And then he enfranchises or gives the power to the people. This isn't democracy yet, but it's just something that Pisistratus came up to protect his own power. So he enlarged, you could say, the voter base. He enlarged people that had, a say in what was going on in the councils. And the people loved it. And through this manner, he was able to remain in power for at least a while. It doesn't work out because, again, just his persona, just his character, he pisses everybody off again. I mean, the aristocrats are already pissed off at him, but he actually even pisses off the people that in the beginning he actually was kind of bribing to be on his side. He actually pisses them off as well, where everybody's just realizing, you're not a good guy. You say you're our friend, but you're not really our friend. And he gets kicked out again. Just kind of a massive uprising. Lower classes and aristocrats alike toss him out. So he's having another woe is me moment. This is not the end of the story, by the way. He's having another woe is me moment. He's walking around mainland Greece again. I can't remember where this was. I want to say this was up more towards like Thrace, like northern Aegean area. He's like way far away, basically. And he just happens to run into a silver mine and becomes filthy rich. And becoming one of the richest people in all the Greek world, he hires a mercenary army, goes back down to Athens, and basically says, I'm your tyrant, and I got this army to support me to say so. What you going to do about it? And the Athenians just have to throw up their hands like, all right, we can't fight that. So he becomes tyrant for the rest of his life. So, now, a lot of people are not happy about that, of course. But this is one of those examples of like, what do you do with a guy like this? Because there's always going to be someone like this that just wants power and they'll do anything to get it, whether you're in a monarchy or a democracy or anything like that. They just want power. What do you do with people like this? So, in comes a guy named Callisthenes, which, by the way, was a huge enemy of Pisistratus and the Pisistrid family. But basically, I'm not going to go through this whole story, but the political winds shift in Athens after the death of Pisistratus, and Callisthenes ends up becoming tyrant of Athens, kind of fix some situations. I'm not actually going to go through that because, again, I feel like it's just going to go way too much into it. But Callisthenes is important for one major reason is he's considered the father of democracy. He looks at all these changes from Draco all the way on down to Pisistratus and himself and the problems that Athens is going through, and he basically says, you know what? We just need to have a written plan of government. We just need to have the city run this way, and that we look to this instead of a tyrant to fix situations. He's saying that as a tyrant. So as a tyrant, he's like saying, you can't look to me all the time. We need to set something up, especially after when I'm not tyrants, where things will just go bad again, that we can look to and say, we're going to stick with this. Now, today we say that the Athenian plan of government, or the Athenian constitution, which you see an example of down at the bottom of the slide there, isn't the most perfect thing in the world, but it is highly influential on every other constitution, especially the American Constitution. since that time, since 2,500 years ago, or when this came about. So, but notice he even hangs on that idea that he doesn't like Pisistratus, but he does hang on the idea that, you know what, all men being able to vote is kind of that does seem like a good idea. Solon's idea of having a council decide on stuff and having it ratified also sounds like a good idea. Although one of the things that he felt like was a problem was that council seemed to be the same guys over and over again. So how do you stop the aristocracy from just kind of keeping their power that way if they're always going to be in there? Well, this is something that we look at and say, man, Athens, you screwed up royally in this situation. Basically, to kind of ruin the power of the aristocracy, Cleisthenes, an aristocrat, says we're going to pull at random who is going to become the next council members, the next council of 500. So that's why I have that picture of like names in a hat type thing. Like you put everybody's name in a hat and you pull out 500 names. If your name was picked the first time, you cannot be picked the next time. They're trying to spread out this idea of who has a say in government. This seems like a great idea, and it could be a great idea if every single guy was up for the job, was doing well. But this is also a great way to get someone that has no clue what they're doing in a position of power. Hence why we like to have the idea today of the republic where you vote for representatives. People who say, okay, I'd like to have power. Will you vote for me type thing? Do you trust me to become this aristocratic type of politician in our society today? So that's one of those things we look at ancient Athens and say, yeah, and drawing names on that, not so great. And it does actually become quite corrupt later on, mainly because people would then, I need to look this up again, I'm sorry. So I could be getting this next part a little bit wrong. But there was a way that people that really wanted to be on the council would actually pay someone else. This might not be fully correct, but the end result is correct. But you pay someone else for their spot in the hat, saying, hey, don't write your name down, write my name down. Or, hey, why don't you put my rock in or my name in instead of yours, and somehow like we know that's true. And so that way you could actually be on the council over and over again when constitutionally you weren't supposed to be able to be on the council over and over again, but it's like a loophole or something. Anyways, basically I'm telling you that it was not a perfect thing, but again, we look to it as this great beginning to what a free society would need to be based off of. We just look at what they did wrong as well and just say, yeah, let's tweak that a little bit. You also have problems, by the way, in Greek democracy or Athenian democracy, where too much voting, it sounds bad, but too much voting in the idea of it got in the way of your daily life. There's always something to vote on every single day. And so people realize that if you want to have a say, you got to be there in the public forum. You got to be there to cast your vote. And it just wasn't working too well. Like they would vote one thing one day. Like here's an actual example. They would vote to go to war one day, and then it'd be like, and it would pass. It's like, all right, let's get on the boats and let's go. But because those guys were not there to vote the next day, which of course the guys getting on the boats are most likely guys that voted to go to war in the first place, then they have another vote on whether to go to war, and they say, nope, let's recall the troops. And so right as those ships are about to leave, they're like, nope, we just voted again, we're not going to war. So then they vote again to say, no, let's leave. And then they have to get on the ships really fast to leave before a vote can be done again and be caught up. Anyway, that actually happens. That actually happens in ancient Athens. And like that is just not an effective way to run a government when you can just overturn a vote from just yesterday. There's got to be some strictures put in place. And yes, our founding fathers definitely looked at that when they were forming the Constitution, and just how laws could be written up and things like that in places like the House of Representatives and the Senate. So, the House of the Senate today, which is the United States government. Anyways, I'm going to leave it here. That's Athens for you. Oh, sorry, I'm not leaving it just there. One more thing you need to know about Athens is everything I've been talking about right now has been leading up towards Athens, how they come up with democracy, because that's huge to understand, and just understanding the world around you. Just what the term means and how we came to it, how it kind of went a little bit wrong in the beginning, but how we looked at it as heavily influential. You need to understand that to understand the world around you, and not just the United States, but to understand all modern Western democracies, even other countries that look to this, countries that have constitutions and things like that, or different plans of government, even the Middle East and in Asia and things like that. Just again, heavily influential. You just need to know that. The next step, though, is that Athens gets pummeled a lot in history from like, well, you guys just are kind of pathetic, squabbling weaklings that argue about everything, but really don't have a good military arm. And that's not necessarily true. The Athenians actually had a pretty good army, but they were exceptional when it came to their navy. They understood that they needed to protect those grain shipments. If you remember that lesson, the colonization, they needed to protect those grain shipments coming in from their colonies around the Aegean and Black Sea and just the greater Mediterranean world. They realized that with a navy, you could protect essentially your economy. You could protect your way of life. And they became easily the best. They had the best navy of ancient Greece. And then we'll find out, and when we get into the wars, the best navy, at least they knew of, in the world. So with that, we'll end this lesson. This is part 2 on ancient Athens. And we'll be getting next time actually into the Persian Wars.